Now, I first studied Reconstruction. I didn't study it at all in high school in Piedmont, West Virginia, but I studied it at Yale. My sophomore year, I took a 2-semester survey course, Introduction to Afro-American History. Oliver, where are you? We were Afro-Americans at that time. You remember that, right? And the professor, William McFeely, who went on to get a Pulitzer Prize for his biography of Ulysses S. Grant, had us read W.E.B. Du Bois's book, Black Reconstruction, published in 1935. And it was radical because it challenged the Dunning School of historians at Columbia University, and they were part and parcel of the mythology of Reconstruction being a dismal failure and an embarrassment to the history of American democracy. And Du Bois took on the Dunning School. And Eric Foner, the chief consultant to our series, it's so ironic that he is our leading Reconstruction historian at Columbia University. It's almost as if, I think he's about to publish his 10th book on Reconstruction on the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which will be out in September. I think it's a personal mission for him to refute the terribly racist claims made by the Dunning School, his own predecessors in the history department at Columbia, and set the record straight. So McFeely had us read Du Bois's book, Black Reconstruction, and then a book by Rayford Logan. Now, most of you haven't heard of Rayford Logan, but Rayford Logan was the 3rd or the 4th black man to get a PhD in history from Harvard. And at one time, he was engaged to Letitia Gates, who happens to be my great aunt. So I'm very biased about Rayford Logan. But he wrote a book called The Betrayal of the Negro. And it's about the period immediately following Reconstruction. Reconstruction, people argue about it, but generally accepted dates 1865 to 1877. So Du Bois's book ends in 1877. Logan's book begins in 1877, and that is the period of the rollback to Reconstruction. And it takes a while to roll it back because black men had an enormous amount of power. Black people were in the majority, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, almost in the majority, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. So there were 16 black men elected to Congress between 1870 and 1877, including 2 United States senators. In South Carolina, Speaker of the House, Secretary of State, one of the great moments of the film, I go to Jim Clyburn's office, and he has all the Reconstruction congressmen on his wall, and he could do a whole black history lesson. But systematically, step by step, the redemptionists, the former Confederates, wrote, the South indeed rose again, and they disenfranchised those black men. And they did it in such a clever way. You couldn't, what are you going to do? The 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments are ratified, right? So you can't get rid of them, but you could go around them. And starting in 1890 with something called the Mississippi Plan, there were state constitutions, which then unfolded over the next 16 years in each of the former Confederate states. And that's when they established poll taxes, literacy tests, comprehension tests that only a law professor could possibly understand. You want to know how dramatically effective these state constitutional conventions were? Louisiana, one of the majority black states, in 1898, before their state constitutional convention, had 130,000 black men registered to vote. The new Constitution was ratified in 1898. By 1904, that number of 130,000 black men registered to vote had been reduced to 1,342. There were 2,000 black men elected to office, according to Eric Foner, during the Reconstruction period. The last Reconstruction congressman, George Henry White, bids farewell to the Congress in 1901. And there wouldn't be another black man elected to the Congress until 1929, when Oscar DePriest from Chicago is elected to Congress. How is he elected to Congress? Because all those black people took part in the Great Migration, went from Mississippi, and particularly to Chicago, went from Mississippi and the other southern states north, and because of the 15th Amendment, they had the right to vote. And so they vote a northerner into the Congress. So for my introduction to Reconstruction was coterminous with an introduction to its rollback.